Steve Mills here, back with another podcast, and it's great to be back sharing some more great ideas to grow your business. Well, at least I hope they are. I hope you think they are. Today I wanted to talk to you about a Q&A, question and answer. Do you have a Q&A is the first question, I suppose, because a Q&A is a great way of getting people to know and understand you a little bit more than they do, perhaps from the words that are generally on web pages. And so if you get questions that you're asked often, then they're also a great way of, in a way, deflecting those questions. And rather than people asking you the same questions again and again and again, it's a great opportunity to reduce time, save money, and so on and so forth by having a Q&A from that point of view. And that might be a client Q&A or a technical Q&A or a Q&A about, I don't know, for me it might be, when people attend a seminar, I have a Q&A for people who book the seminar. Where is it? Do we get breaks? Is lunch thrown in? All those types of things. So they're great ways of, if you get asked the same thing again and again, then they're very, very useful. But how can you really use them, from a marketing perspective? That's what I'd like to talk about. And one of the ways is, maybe perhaps on a webinar. If you've got a webinar, then, pretty much most people would tend to have a webinar with a Q&A on it. People can ask questions and you can answer them. What about on video? Could you do that? Could you do a Q&A on a video? Could you do a webinar that was just a Q&A? I could possibly do a webinar that said, right, okay, at 12 o'clock, I'm going to be answering all your marketing questions today. And just come on the webinar. You'll be live on the webinar. You can actually talk on this webinar, which most webinars you can't. And on this webinar, you're going to be able to ask me whatever question you would like, and I will do my best to answer that question. So a little bit scary, I suppose. You're live on a webinar, perhaps with hundreds of people, and people are firing questions at you. And for me, I would have no hesitation in doing it, and I would have no hesitation in saying, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. So as long as you're, I think old enough and wise enough is probably the situation to be able to, put your hand up and say you don't know, then, that format could also be useful. Having done that, you could then potentially take that Q&A, get it transcribed into a document, into a report or something like that. You could then turn it into a blog. You could take the individual questions and upload them to social media, assuming you've got the answers as well, I would suggest. And you could even do a Q&A in terms of a video interview. Get somebody sat down with you and get them to interview and ask you a variety of, I suppose, already arranged questions. But that format I really like, actually. I think it's a great format to do in video because it makes it much easier. It's much easier to talk to somebody on video than it is to stare down the camera and produce that video. So, that might be something that you look at doing. The key for me is taking action and actually having one. Not every website, not every blog has got a Q&A on it, but if yours did, then well done for you. The next question I'd ask is, when was the last time you reviewed it? Those questions may be obsolete. There may be new questions that are not actually on there that could be, and so on and so forth. Perhaps you could go through and improve the answers that you've given. And work on that for a little while. Perhaps, you could produce some video answers. So people ask the questions in text and you answer them in video. That would be, maybe enhancing the Q&A page on your website. What else could you do? You could possibly produce a video-based Q&A, as I've already mentioned. You could produce specific Q&A pages that are linked to specific projects or products. So, for example, I could produce a Q&A for my LinkedIn training, another one for my Results Club, another one for my Done For You service and my consultancy service. So I could produce several Q&As that go on my website. The next thing I wanted to talk about is what you do with a Q&A, because for most people, they put them on their website and, perhaps a few people look at them, but what I'm suggesting here is that you market that Q&A. And so you've got a Q&A, whether it's video format, Word format, whatever the format is, interview format, and what you're going to do is get that Q&A out there. So the question is how you're going to do that. The answer, in my opinion, should be why not maximize? Why wouldn't you push that out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc.? Why wouldn't you get it, if it's video format, onto YouTube and optimize that for Google? Why wouldn't you send out an email telling people about it? Why wouldn't you talk about the Q&A to your prospects and clients and tell them, go and ask them. Here's a great tip. Go and ask them if they've got questions that you think you should add to your Q&A. That might be a really good way of doing it. And so, having a Q&A is great. Having a Q&A page, I'm talking about here. And but really what matters is marketing that page. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to end the podcast at this point. So get a Q&A. If you can do a video Q&A, that would be really cool. If you can improve the questions, improve the answers that you give in your Q&A, and then if you can market that Q&A, I meant to say, if you can market that Q&A, then, that's really the icing on the cake. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks very much for listening.